The sinister truth behind Rip Van Winkle. You grew up hearing the gentle version: a tired villager wanders into the Catskills, drinks with strangers, and wakes 20 years later to a changed world. Comforting, almost sweet. But legends don't survive because they're kind, they survive because they hide something. Tonight, we open the seam in Rip's story and pull at the thread Irving left for those willing to look. What if the men in the mountains weren't magical, but condemned? What if the drink wasn't a blessing, but a pact? And what if Rip didn't simply oversleep history, what if he chose to miss it? If stories like this awaken something in you, subscribe now, leave a like, and tell us what truth you think the legend hides. Your comment might shape our next reveal. Because behind the mural of nostalgia lies a darker portrait, a nation learning to love forgetfulness, a man discovering that comfort can cost a life. Follow the trail of torn pages, foreign echoes, and thunder that sounds like ninepins rolling through time. When we arrive at the village below the mist, when the Catskills open like a locked door, you'll see the tale you thought you knew was only the lullaby. Now, let's begin in the quiet village at the foot of the mountains. In the quiet village at the foot of the Catskill Mountains, time once moved like the slow current of the Hudson River. Rip Van Winkle was known to everyone, a man too kind to refuse a favor, too soft to resist a nap. He spent his days helping neighbors, escaping his wife's scolding, and wandering the woods with his loyal dog, Wolf. The townsfolk pitied him yet envied his calm detachment from life's burdens. He seemed untouched by the march of history, a man content in his own stillness. But legends often hide behind still waters, waiting for one restless night to stir the depths. One autumn evening, as twilight bled into the valley, Rip heard voices echoing through the mist. Strange laughter, distant yet near, drew him deeper into the mountains. There, he found men dressed in antique clothes, their faces pale as moonlight, silently playing at ninepins. They spoke little, but their presence felt heavy, almost ancient. One of them offered Rip a drink, a liquid thick as honey, glowing faintly in the dark. He drank, and the world tilted. The night folded into silence, the earth hummed, and sleep claimed him like a spell centuries old. When Rip opened his eyes, the forest had changed. The air smelled older, drier. His musket was rusted, his beard had grown long and silver, and Wolf was gone. The world around him felt both familiar and foreign. He stumbled down the mountain path, expecting the same laughter of children, the same gossiping neighbors. But the village had changed, new faces, new flags, new names. People stared at him as though a ghost had walked out of the mist. Only when he spoke did someone whisper, "It's Rip Van Winkle, returned from the dead." Rip's story became legend, the man who slept through 20 years, missing an entire revolution. To children, it was a fairy tale of wonder. To adults, a reminder of time's cruelty. The tale seemed harmless enough, a sleepy man blessed, or cursed, by magic. But in every retelling, something darker slipped through the cracks: the silence of the men in the mountains, the strange glow of their drink, the sorrow in Rip's eyes when he realized the world had moved on without him. It was a story that comforted the lazy, and haunted the wise. Generations later, Rip's tale would be read in schools, painted in murals, romanticized as the dream of a simpler time. But no one ever asked why he slept. No one wondered who those men were, or what the drink truly was. The story was wrapped neatly in nostalgia, a lullaby for a nation that loved forgetting. Yet hidden within its simplicity lies a truth, one Irving never confessed. And that truth was never meant to comfort anyone. Irving published Rip Van Winkle in 1819, when the United States was still defining itself, a nation young, proud, and uncertain of its soul. His story appeared harmless, a folktale about sloth, change, and time. But beneath its simplicity, something deeper pulsed. America had just awakened from its own sleep, the long slumber of colonial rule. The war for independence had ended, yet the people were still searching for identity, for purpose. In that search, Rip's story became a mirror, a man who sleeps through revolution and awakens to a world reborn. Irving didn't invent the tale from thin air. Scholars later uncovered its European twin, an old German legend called Peter Klaus, about a shepherd who wanders into the hills, drinks with spectral knights, and sleeps for 20 years. When he wakes, no one remembers him. The resemblance is too precise to ignore. Irving had Americanized an ancient warning, the danger of abandoning duty, of surrendering to apathy. But in doing so, he transformed tragedy into comfort. The original was punishment, his became nostalgia. And that shift changed everything about what Rip Van Winkle meant. Why would Irving soften such a cruel story? Some say it was national pride, America needed heroes, not reminders of its cowardice. Others believe it was personal. Irving's family had been loyalists during the Revolution, caught between two worlds. His version of Rip wasn't a rebel or a coward, just a dreamer lost in time. Perhaps it was his way of forgiving a generation that had failed to act. Or perhaps it was a mask, a parable disguised as folklore, concealing truths too heavy for a young nation to face. The Catskills, once described as serene, take on new meaning when viewed through this lens. They are not simply mountains, they are monuments of forgetting, a place where time stands still so people don't have to. The drink that put Rip to sleep. A metaphor for denial. The men in strange clothes. Ghosts of old Europe haunting a newborn America. Each element becomes political, symbolic, unsettling. Irving wasn't merely telling a bedtime story. He was warning a country that comfort is the slowest poison. And yet, for 2 centuries, readers have treated Rip Van Winkle as harmless nostalgia, a quaint piece of early Americana. School children laugh, adults reminisce, and no one questions what the tale truly says. But if the German original punished its dreamer, then Rip's gentle awakening feels suspiciously merciful. Too merciful. Because in the oldest versions of the legend, men who fall asleep in cursed mountains, never wake up. What if Rip shouldn't have, either? Long before Irving's pen touched paper, the legend of a man lost to time haunted the forests of Germany. In the small Harz Mountains, villagers told stories of a shepherd named Peter Klaus who vanished one evening while herding goats. When he didn't return, the villagers searched, finding only hoofprints and a trail of spilled feed leading toward the dark hills. Years later, an old man appeared, claiming to be Peter. His beard was white, his clothes rotted, and his eyes hollow with confusion. He spoke of ghostly knights who lured him into a mountain feast, of golden cups, glowing wine, and a music that made his heart slow until the world faded away. But Peter's awakening was no miracle. The village he returned to had forgotten his name. His wife was dead, his children grown old. The church bells sounded wrong to his ears, the streets felt alien. When he saw his reflection in a window, he screamed, the youth he remembered was gone. In some tellings, he dies on the spot, in others, he wanders mad into the forest, never seen again. There was no comfort, no magic. The story was a warning whispered to young men, do not stray into the mountains, for sleep is a kind of death. Irving stripped this darkness away. He took the German ghost story and gave it an American smile, a sleepy grin that hid the horror. But even in his version, fragments of the curse remain. The mysterious men with their silent game of ninepins, they are nearly identical to the ghostly knights of the Harz Mountains. Their laughter echoes like thunder, a sound both divine and damned. The drink they offer Rip, sweet, glowing, intoxicating, mirrors the enchanted wine that trapped Peter Klaus in timeless slumber. Yet Irving never explained who they were. He simply called them the spirits of Henry Hudson's crew. But why sailors? Why ghosts of explorers? That question has never been answered. Perhaps Irving replaced the knights with sailors to hide the tale's true meaning, to root its horror in history, not hell. Hudson's doomed expedition vanished near those same mountains, leaving behind men who mutinied and perished. The legend says their souls wander still, condemned to relive their crime. By letting Rip drink with them, Irving may have implied something darker, that Rip, too, joined the condemned. That his sleep wasn't escape, it was initiation. The spell wasn't cast on him. He accepted it willingly, the way all who choose ignorance do. And when he awoke, what if he hadn't truly returned? What if the world he saw, the new flags, the strange faces, wasn't the future, but the afterlife? The quiet of the mountains, the stillness of time, the absence of wolf, everything feels too perfect, too final. The story tells us he lived out his days in peace. But read carefully, and you'll find no witnesses to his death, no grave, no record. Maybe Rip Van Winkle never woke up at all. Rip's 20-year slumber was never about rest. It was about retreat, the dangerous peace that comes from silence. The mountain didn't curse him, it welcomed him. In Irving's America, people saw Rip as lucky, a man who escaped war, aging, and responsibility. But that's the very point. His story isn't about magic, it's about denial. The moment he lifted that glowing cup, he chose the comfort of dreams over the pain of truth. And when he finally opened his eyes, it wasn't to a world changed by time, it was to one changed by courage, while he had done nothing. The silent figures he met were reflections of himself, ghosts of complacency, trapped in endless repetition. Their 9-pin game echoes the sound of thunder rolling through the mountains, like distant cannons of a war he slept through. Each strike, each echo, reminds the viewer of history's rhythm, progress demanding presence. But Rip was absent. His apathy turned into timelessness, his escape into exile. He didn't lose 20 years, he lost the right to belong to his own era. That's the quiet tragedy of his awakening. On a deeper level, Rip's story mirrors a universal human truth. We all crave the comfort of sleep, not the physical kind, but the moral one. The sleep of convenience. The slumber of ignoring injustice because it doesn't knock on our door. Rip's mountain is the same mountain we climb every time we choose silence over action. He didn't die up there, he faded. He became an echo of the man he was, hollowed out by peace bought too cheaply. And maybe that's why the tale still unsettles us. Beneath the folklore, it whispers a question we all fear: how many years of our lives have we slept through? How many revolutions, personal or collective, passed while we dreamed of better days but did nothing to make them real? Rip's eyes, when he awoke, were filled not with wonder, but with shame. His story was never meant to comfort the weary. It was meant to wake the unwilling. So when we hear the laughter of those mountain spirits, or the thunder of 9-pins rolling through history, we should listen closely. Maybe they're not ghosts. Maybe they're warnings. Reminders that time moves on, whether we act or not. And one day, when we finally open our eyes, the world we knew will be gone, changed beyond recognition. And we'll realize the same haunting truth Rip did: the world didn't abandon us. We slept through it. In the twilight of his life, Rip Van Winkle became a relic, a story told around fires, a curiosity rather than a man. Children laughed at his long beard, and elders spoke of him with gentle pity. Yet deep inside, Rip carried a sorrow he could never name. He wandered the village like a living ghost, half in the world, half outside it. The laughter he once loved now sounded distant, foreign. The flags that waved in the street spoke a language he didn't understand. He had awakened, yes, but to a world that no longer remembered the man he had been. Irving ends the tale with Rip sitting by the inn, telling his story to anyone who would listen. People smiled, nodded, and returned to their lives unchanged. But that image, the old man repeating his past to deaf ears, is not whimsical, it's tragic. Rip's endless retelling is his punishment. He is doomed to speak, but never to be heard. In every version, he warns others of the mountain's enchantment, yet no one listens. They see him as entertainment, not prophecy. His tale became the very thing it condemned, a bedtime story for those still asleep. If Rip's 20-year sleep mirrors the silence of a generation, his lonely awakening mirrors ours. We live surrounded by noise yet numb to truth, connected yet detached, informed yet idle. Rip's curse isn't that he slept, it's that he awoke to find no one else had. The tragedy of time isn't its passage, but its indifference. The world moves on, forgiving nothing and waiting for no one. And when Rip looked into the river's reflection and saw a stranger staring back, perhaps he realized that the true horror was not aging, but awakening too late. Rip Van Winkle's story is more than folklore. It's a mirror held against every era that chooses comfort over conscience. His sleep is the silence of artists who stop speaking, of citizens who stop caring, of hearts that stop hoping. The men who offered him the drink weren't demons or ghosts, they were symbols of temptation, the eternal promise that sleep is easier than struggle. Rip drank. We all have. And the question left for us is simple: will we wake before everything we love becomes unrecognizable? Maybe that's why the story endures. Because deep down, we fear we're all Rip Van Winkle, dreamers lulled by distraction, waiting for time to forgive what it never will. So when the thunder rolls across the valley, or the world feels like it's moving without us, remember the man who slept through history. Maybe Rip never died. Maybe he just became us. If this story awakens something in you, don't go back to sleep. Subscribe for more forgotten truths, and help us uncover the legends that were never meant to comfort, but to wake us.